The CEO of NPR should access the internet, and I want to, well, and obviously I'm joking. I know she has access to it, but she appears not to want us to know she has access to it. And I wanted to get into why, because, of course, you know that the Senate voted to withdraw, to claw back $1.1 billion in funding to NPR, despite this woman's protestations. And I want to get to that by way of starting with this. Pam Bondi, who is a Fox News guest almost all the time, sometimes acts as Attorney General. President Trump has been begging people to not talk about Jeff Epstein. He's been demanding that people not talk about Jeff Epstein. Therefore, with all due respect to the president, whose policies I support and I voted for and I want to do well, no, sir, Mr. President, I'm not going to stop talking about it because it matters. So that didn't work, telling people to stop talking about it. So Pam Bondi just announced that they're going to get all the grand jury transcripts are going to be unsealed, and so that people can see this stuff. That's an interesting change. Would that have been reported by NPR? You know, the Jeff Epstein stories. Because NPR had a whole lot of selective reporting. And the CEO of that organization, Catherine Marr, who says that sometimes our obsession with truth gets in the way of doing the right thing, telling good stories. She contends there's no reason for people to believe there's any bias there. But John Kennedy, the senator, he provided a number of examples. So did a guy who used to work at NPR. Not used to work, he was there 25 years in a senior position. He says that NPR is getting exactly what they want. But let's start with this Pam Bondi thing. Let's start with this media. Let's start with Brian Stelter, not at NPR, but works in the same world. Very much related to the world of NPR. And I'm going to give you classic Stelter in just a second because it is quite an image. It's quite an image to imagine living in a world where we're literally in the book of Acts. And if you're a Christian, you know what that means. It means Jesus has ascended back to heaven. We've been called to build his church. And against Christ's church, the gates of Hades cannot stand. So the people at Angel Studios, the maker of King of Kings and Sound of Freedom, they've created a new series called Testament. This takes the book of Acts into a world of a surveillance state, a censorship state, a state where people hate the truth. In other words, does that sound familiar? So follow the people who built Christ's church, characterized in this movie, Philip, Stephen, Paul, even Mary, they imagine in this movie, or this series, Testament, as they put their lives on the line. And ask yourself a question, would you do it? This isn't soft soap Christianity. This is a hard question. Do we have what it takes to stand for Jesus? Go to angel.com/Todd. Become an Angel Studio Premium Guild member. Stream Testament immediately. Get to vote on the programs that they release and promote, including their movies. Angel.com/Todd. Brian Stelter works in the same world as this image maker, Catherine Marr. She's at NPR. He's at CNN. They were talking about Jeff Epstein. Pam Bondi now saying the grand jury, these files are going to be released. President Trump had demanded that. Here's Stelter.
The problem for the president is that his fans for years have been told that there's this secret locked door, this black box with all these horrible secrets about pedophiles inside the box. That's what Trump, but really not really Trump, actually his surrogates, his allies, his MAGA media fans, that's what they've been saying for years. So all of a sudden tonight, Trump is saying, we're going to take a flashlight and we're going to point it at one corner of the box. But the problem with the conspiracy theory is there's always more darkness somewhere around, right? There's always another corner where secrets could be concealed. Any attempt now by Trump and Bondi to release some documents will have people asking about other documents and other parts of the black box. This may never fully go away for him.
Yeah, it's really difficult to find examples of stuff like that in elite media circles. So difficult. I mean, this took me almost 6 seconds. CNN, Connecticut man John Griffin was arrested Friday and charged with 3 counts of using a facility of interstate commerce to attempt to entice minors to engage in unlawful activities with their bodies. And you know what that means. The United States Attorney's Office for the District of Vermont said in a news release, Griffin, 44, has been a producer with CNN for about 8 years. Do you remember this? He enticed the purported parents of minor daughters, which he allegedly tried to persuade them to allow him to train their daughters to be submissive to his lusts, including some contact, lustful contact on his part with a 9-year-old girl. That didn't take long. So Brian Stelter, that didn't take a flashlight going into all the dark corners. People who've worked in elite media circles are quite aware that there is a different moral equilibrium there. People who've worked in Washington, D.C. are quite aware that there's a different moral equilibrium there. But people who work there for too long can't see it anymore. They can't relate to it. So it's no surprise to me that Catherine Maher cannot see how horrible NPR has become. As this clawback now of $1.1 billion the Senate voted for, this guy who used to work at NPR said it's a long time coming. He says that's their happy Independence Day, NPR. NPR embraced a fringe progressivism that costed any legitimate claim to stand as an impartial provider of news, writes Uri Berliner, and this goes to the Free Press. Great credit to them. Catherine Maher said this, talking about defending her corrupt organization, NPR. She was on, guess where? CNN.
As far as the accusations that we're biased, I would stand up and say, please show me a story that concerns you, because we want to know and we want to bring that conversation back to our newsroom.
Do you? Senator John Kennedy had some examples, just some reading of some headlines. He did this across, I think, 4 days.
I want to give you a few examples of stories that NPR has published using taxpayer money. Michael Avenatti, quote, a profile of the media-savvy attorney. How racism became a marketing tool for country music. Donald Trump's long embrace of Vladimir Putin. Monuments and teams have changed names. Let me say it again. Monuments and teams, presumably sports teams, have changed names as America reckons with racism. Birds are next. Eating less beef is a climate solution. Here's why that's hard for some American men.
That's day one. Senator Kennedy went back at it. Day two, with more headlines that Senator Kennedy read.
How the Taliban adds to Afghanistan's woes when it comes to climate-fueled disaster. And there's more. There is no neutral. Nice white people can still be complicit in a racist society. Ibram X. Kendi says no one is not racist. So what should we do? How artificial intelligence could perpetuate racism, sexism, and other biases in society.
So that's day two. Here's some from day three with Senator Kennedy. And remember, Catherine Maher said, if you've got some stories that concern you, please serve them up.
Arguments that trans athletes have an unfair advantage lack evidence to support. A brief history of how racism shaped interstate highways. Trump embodies nearly every aspect of a racist, Arthur says.
That's day three, just a bit from day four. Then we'll go to Catherine Maher in her own words.
How illegitimate critical race theory concerns shaped Louisiana's new social studies standards. Trump's anti-trans effort is an agenda cornerstone with echoes in history.
So now I'm going to have to reach down to my computer and blow this up so I can properly see it. But here's some postings from Catherine Maher on social media. In this case, she's wearing a Biden for president hat and a black woke mask. White silence is complicity. If you're white, today is the day to start a conversation in your community. Today, like every single day, yet just another great day to follow more black women as well as all people of color on this here website. Sure, looting is counterproductive, but it's hard to be mad about protests not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression founded on treating people's ancestors as private property. And it continues in this. Now, that's her as a private individual, but remember, she ran NPR. So here's Uri Berliner, who worked there for 25 years in a senior editorial position. He begged them to change. He begged NPR to not do this, to not become this thing. He wrote, embracing the mantras of the Great Awakening, NPR became a caricature of itself with headlines like these. Microfeminism. The next big thing in fighting the patriarchy. Which skin color emoji should you use? The answer can be more complex than you think. Black women's groups find health and healing on hikes, but sometimes racism too. Bringing diversity to Maine's nearly all-white lobster fleet. Okay. Do black people want to catch lobsters? At one hand, we're told that black people are used for all the menial labor or all the brown people, but they don't want to go catch lobsters? Bringing different, okay, we got that. Diet culture can hurt kids. This author advises parents to reclaim the word fat. In other words, make your kid happy to be on the path to type 2 diabetes. These drag artists know how to turn climate activism into a joyful blowout. $1.1 billion clawed back. And Catherine Marr said that she could not see any examples of any stories that could concern anybody. This comes down to a fact, and it's a gross fact, and it's a real fact. People cannot smell their own stink. True story. You go on vacation for about 2 weeks and come back home, walk inside, you're going to smell your house. Now, perhaps you're very, very fastidious, and so you keep your house clean, and you've got air filters running. Maybe you've got a maid service, in which case you come in, and what do you smell? Soap and maybe some air freshener, etc. But if you have cats or anything like that, or dogs or anything like that, or you're not perfect, or you forgot to empty the garbage, and so therefore you've got rotted food in the garbage, etc. If you come in and you smell that stuff, you're smelling what other people smell when they walk into your house. You can smell the stink. The people in Washington, D.C. media circles and people like Catherine Marr cannot smell that because they roll in it. The fact of the matter is, Catherine Marr, of course, has access to the internet. In fact, she ran Wikipedia for a while. She knows we can all look this up. But she knows something else. Because she was on air at CNN making that defense, she knew she was speaking to people who have no idea that NPR banned the Hunter Biden laptop story. Public radio banned it. So the $1.1 billion isn't really going to hurt NPR. It's a very small percentage of what they take in. It is going to hurt local radio. And here's the solution. When I worked in Seattle radio, a friend of mine went to work at a public radio affiliate, and he came and I saw him one day, and it turned out he had a staff of about 5 people supporting his program of 1 hour. Taxpayer paid people. I worked on the Rush Limbaugh program probably 150 times as a fill-in host. The most people ever in that studio at one time were 3, ever. It was the most successful radio program in history and the most profitable. And it had fewer people in the studio for a 3-hour show than my friend's local public radio program had for his 1-hour program. Local tax-supported radio, losing tax money, can survive if they'll make it a habit to actually go out and smell their own stink, like the wasting of taxpayer dollars.